Dongwu. Kim sat in the smallest chair in the biggest room he had ever seen. The council chamber stretched out like a metal ocean around him. 47 different alien species filled the massive space with their sounds, smells, and strange movements. Some floated in glass tanks filled with purple gas. Others stood on 6 legs that clicked against the metal floor. A few looked almost human, but their eyes were too big or their skin was too blue. Dongwu had been coming to this place for 30 years. He was 62 now, and his back hurt from sitting in chairs that were not made for humans. His hair had turned completely gray during his time here. The other humans always asked him why he kept trying. Why did he keep coming back to this place where nobody listened to them? "The humans want to speak," announced the voice from the ceiling. It sounded bored, like someone reading a shopping list. Dongwu stood up slowly. His knees made a small, popping sound. Around the chamber, aliens turned to look at him. Some looked curious. Most looked like they were already thinking about lunch. The huge screen behind him showed a map of space with red lines connecting different star systems. "Honored council members," Dongwu began. His voice echoed in the enormous room. "Earth proposes new trade routes through sectors 7 and 12. These paths would cut travel time by 40% and reduce fuel costs for all member species." He had practiced this speech 100 times. The math was perfect. The benefits were clear. Any reasonable person would see that this was a good idea. Councillor Vexathari rose from his platform. He was 8 feet tall with golden skin that seemed to glow. His species, the Alterians, controlled most of the galaxy's trade. When Vexathari spoke, everyone listened. "The human proposal is quaint," Vexathari said. His voice was smooth like expensive wine. "But these routes pass through several contested zones. The risk is too high for civilized species to consider." Dongwu felt his chest tighten. "Honored Counselor, our surveys show these zones have been peaceful for over 50 years. The risk assessment indicates, perhaps," Vexathari interrupted, "the humans should focus on what they do best. Following orders, providing raw materials, simple tasks that match their capabilities." Laughter rippled through the chamber. Not cruel laughter, but the kind adults make when a child says something silly. Dongwu had heard this sound many times before. It never stopped hurting. Dr. So-Min Park, sitting next to Dongwu, touched his arm gently. She was 45 and brilliant. She understood alien biology better than most aliens understood themselves. But in this room, she was just another human. "Thank you for your time, Honored Council," Dongwu said quietly. He sat down. The chair felt smaller than before. The session continued for 3 more hours. The council discussed mining rights on distant worlds. They talked about defense contracts worth billions of credits. They planned exploration missions to new galaxies. Humans were not mentioned again. After the session ended, Dongwu walked slowly through the corridors of the station. His footsteps echoed off the walls. Captain Jinho Lee caught up with him. Jinho was younger, maybe 40, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. "That was rough," Jinho said. "Same as always," Dongwu replied. not exactly the same. Did you see how they looked at us today? Like we were furniture they forgot to throw away. So Min joined them at the elevator. She was carrying a data pad with the trade route proposal. All those hours of work reduced to rejected files. 50 years of this, she said. 50 years of being treated like children who should be grateful for scraps. The elevator carried them up to the human quarters. These rooms were smaller than what other species got. The furniture was basic. The walls were gray metal without decoration. It felt like living in a storage closet. Dongwu's personal communicator beeped softly. He looked at the screen and saw a message from Earth. The sender was listed as Project Coordinator. The message was short and encrypted. Exodus ready. Awaiting authorization. Time frame, immediate. Dongwu stared at the message for a long time. Project Exodus. He had been briefed about it 6 months ago in a secure facility deep under the Rocky Mountains. What he learned there had changed everything he thought he knew about humanity's place in the galaxy. Sir? Somin was looking at him with concern. Bad news from home? No, Dongwu said slowly. Maybe the opposite. That night, Dongwu could not sleep. He stood by the window of his quarters looking out at the stars. Viridian. Prime was a gas giant with 17 moons. The biggest moon had cities on it where millions of aliens lived and worked. From here it looked peaceful and beautiful. He thought about Earth, about the blue oceans and white clouds, about cities where humans lived and worked and dreamed, about children who would grow up to be explorers and scientists and artists. Those children deserved better than this. His communicator chimed again. Another message from Earth, this one longer. All preparations complete. Fleet assets positioned. Colony. Ships ready for departure. New territories surveyed and approved. Independent trade agreements established with rim species. Defense systems operational. Awaiting final authorization for complete withdrawal. Dongwu sat down at his desk and opened his computer. He began typing a formal document. The heading read, Notice of Withdrawal from the Galactic Cooperative Council. The document was simple. 1 page. It stated that humanity was ending its membership in the Council effective immediately. All human representatives would return to Earth. All human colonies would cease trade with Council members. All defense agreements were terminated. At the bottom, Dongwu typed his name and title. Then he pressed send. The next morning, Dongwu packed his belongings into a single bag. Somin and Jinho did the same. They had served together for so long that words were not needed. They all understood what was happening. Other aliens in the corridors barely looked at them. To most council members, humans were background noise. 3 humans carrying bags were not worth noticing. At the docking bay, their ship waited. It was small and plain compared to the elegant vessels of other species. But it was human-built, and it would take them home. As the ship pulled away from the station, Dongwu looked back one last time. The council would continue its meetings. They would discuss trade and territory and power. They probably would not notice that the humans were gone until someone needed to blame for something. Do you think they'll try to bring us back? Somin asked. Dongwu smiled for the first time in months. Eventually, but by then, it will be too late. The ship turned toward home, leaving the council behind in the darkness of space. 3 months passed before anyone in the council noticed the humans were gone. Counselor Theckmore was the first to mention it. He was reviewing trade reports when he saw a gap in the data. The Zelhari were a reptilian species that controlled several mining operations. Theckmore had scales like green metal and eyes that never blinked. "Where are the resource shipments from the human worlds?" he asked his aide. The aide, a younger Zelhari with duller scales, checked his computer. "Sir, the humans withdrew from the council 3 months ago. All trade agreements were terminated." Theckmore made a sound like steam escaping from a pipe. It was how his species laughed. "Withdrew? Like children having a tantrum. How much revenue are we losing?" "Approximately 12 million credits per cycle, sir. Mostly raw materials and agricultural products. Barely worth counting," Theckmore said. "Let them sulk. They'll be back when they get hungry." In another part of the station, Ambassador Yulneth floated inside her containment suit. The Scions were beings of pure energy who needed special equipment to interact with physical matter. Her thoughts moved like silver light through the transparent chamber. Yulneth had just finished reading a report about human withdrawal. Her species considered themselves the most evolved in the galaxy. They found human emotions primitive and chaotic. "Emotional instability," she communicated to her assistant through telepathy. "Humans were always too volatile for serious diplomatic work." This was inevitable. Her assistant, another scion named Kethrall, pulsed with agreement. "Should we file a formal response?" "Unnecessary. Their absence simplifies our decision-making process." High Chancellor Vordak was ancient even by the standards of his long-lived species. He had ruled the council for over 200 years. His people, the Corvani, looked like walking trees with bark-like skin and branches for arms. Vordak's office was the size of a cathedral. The walls were covered with star maps showing council territory. A small red mark indicated where human space used to be. "The human situation requires attention," his secretary informed him. The secretary was a floating robot with multiple arms and a polite voice. "Handle it," Vordak said without looking up from his reports. "Offer them reduced penalties if they return within the cycle. Standard procedure for rebellious junior members." "Yes, Your Excellence. Shall I assign this to the diplomatic corps?" "No need. Give it to a clerk. 3rd level should be sufficient." The clerk who received the assignment was named Gentar. She was from a species that looked like giant butterflies with hands. This was her first year working for the council, and she was eager to do well. Gentar spent 2 days writing a formal letter to Earth. The letter explained that humans could return to the council if they paid a fine and agreed to better behavior in the future. The tone was like a teacher scolding a student who had skipped class. She sent the letter through official channels and marked the file as resolved. Meanwhile, Counselor Vexathari was meeting with other Alterian leaders. They gathered in a private room with golden walls and floating chairs. The Alterians were planning how to divide human territory among themselves. The humans controlled 17 star systems, Vexathari explained, Most are barely developed, but 3 have valuable mineral deposits. His colleague, Admiral Zarlin, nodded approvingly. My fleet can secure those systems within a month. The humans left no defenses worth mentioning. Excellent. We can establish mining operations immediately. The other council members won't object to us claiming abandoned territory. Another Alterian, Trade Minister Velkoth, was studying shipping routes on a holographic display. Removing human space creates some gaps in our trade networks. We'll need to establish new waypoints. Minor inconvenience, Vexathari said. The profits from their worlds will more than compensate for increased travel time. The meeting ended with satisfied agreement. The Alterians had already begun planning colonies for human worlds that were thousands of light years away, but not everyone was completely ignoring the human departure. Captain Rexali of the Council Intelligence Division was reading reports. That troubled him. The Nexari were a cautious species that had survived by paying attention to details others missed. Rexali's report showed something strange. Long-range sensors had detected unusual energy signatures in the areas where human colonies used to be. The readings didn't match any known technology. He brought his concerns to his supervisor, Director Quintal. Sir, I recommend we investigate these anomalies. The energy patterns are unlike anything in our databases. Director Quintal barely looked at the report. The humans probably left some old equipment running, not worth the resources to investigate. But, sir, these readings suggest advanced technology. More advanced than anything humans have shown us before. Captain Rexali, humans are a primitive species that barely mastered faster-than-light travel 50 years ago. Whatever you're seeing is either a sensor error or abandoned mining equipment. The report was filed under low priority and forgotten. The Council's main computer systems, automatic processes continued tracking trade routes and shipping schedules. Several routes that had passed through human space were now showing delays. Ships had to take longer paths around the empty zones where human worlds used to provide refueling and supplies. The delays were small at first. A few hours here, a day there. Most traders just absorbed the extra costs and continued their business. But some of the more experienced captains began to notice patterns. Captain Mordek commanded a freight hauler that carried luxury goods between Alterian colonies. He had been using the same routes for 20 years. Now his trip times had increased by 15%. This is getting expensive, he complained to his crew. We're burning extra fuel and losing time. The humans may have been annoying, but their stations were efficient. His first officer, a young Alterian named Secton, shrugged. Command says they'll establish new waypoints soon. Things will return to normal. Maybe. But it's been 3 months already. How long does it take to build a fuel station? What Captain Mordek didn't know was that the Alterians had sent survey teams to human worlds and found them completely empty. Not abandoned with equipment left behind, not destroyed by warfare, simply empty, as if millions of people had vanished into thin air. The survey reports were classified and sent to military intelligence, but even there, nobody seemed concerned. The assumption was that humans had simply moved their populations to other worlds within their territory. In the council chambers, daily business continued without interruption. New trade agreements were signed, territorial disputes were resolved, Defense budgets were approved. The empty seats where human representatives used to sit were not even mentioned. Some of the younger council members had never worked directly with humans. To them, the change was barely noticeable. Others who remembered the humans thought of them as a minor species that had finally accepted their limitations. Only a few voices wondered if something important had been lost. Counselor Tara Esch of the peaceful Melodin species had occasionally found human perspectives useful during difficult negotiations. Humans had a talent for finding compromises that satisfied everyone. But even Tara Esch didn't speak up. The mood in the council was clear. Humans were gone, and nobody wanted to appear weak by suggesting they might be missed. As the 4th month approached, the first real problems began to surface. The Harketh Dominion, an aggressive military empire on the galaxy's edge, had started, expanding into territories that used to be protected by human early warning systems. The reports reached Council intelligence as routine border incidents. Nobody connected them to the missing humans. After all, what could a primitive species contribute to galactic security? The Council continued its meetings, making plans for a future that assumed humans would remain irrelevant. They had no idea that somewhere in the darkness between stars, humanity was preparing surprises that would change everything. Admiral Hyejin Choi stood on the bridge of the newest human warship and watched her home disappear behind a wall of twisted space. The ship was called the New Soul, and it was unlike anything humanity had ever built before. 6 months had passed since the withdrawal from the Council. 6 months of the most intense activity in human history. While the aliens argued about trade routes and territory, humanity had been busy with something much more important. "Fold space jump complete, Admiral," reported the navigation officer. Lieutenant Kang was young and excited to be part of something this big. "We are now 17,000 light-years from Council space." Hyejin nodded. She was 48 years old and had spent her entire career preparing for this moment. 20 years ago, she had been a captain in Earth's small defense fleet. Back then, humans had 36 ships that could barely fight off pirates. Now, she commanded over 200 vessels that could appear anywhere in the galaxy without warning. "Communications. Contact the advance teams. I want a full report on our new territories." The communications officer, Commander Park, pressed buttons on her console. Signals traveled through fold space faster than light itself. Within seconds, voices from distant worlds filled the bridge. "Admiral, this is Colonel Mi-Young Shin reporting from Kepler Station. Our survey teams have identified 47 worlds suitable for immediate colonization. All are outside Council territory and legally unclaimed." Hyejin smiled. Mi-Young had been her friend since they attended the military academy together. Now Mi-Young led the special operations teams that had been scouting the galaxy's edge for 2 years. "Excellent work, Colonel. What about our new neighbors?" "We've made contact with 3 species, the Kethvara, the Mordani, and the Juxtai. All are friendly and interested in trade agreements." This was the best news Hyejin had heard in months. While the Council treated humans like servants, humanity had found entire civilizations that were willing to be partners. Dr. Tae-Young Nam joined Hyejin on the bridge. He was the scientist who had made all of this possible. 5 years ago, His research team had discovered how to fold space-time like origami. Instead of traveling through space, ships could step outside normal reality and emerge anywhere they wanted. The Council's fastest ships needed months to cross the galaxy. Human ships could do it in hours. "How are the engines performing?" Hyejin asked. "Better than expected," Tae-young replied. He was a thin man with thick glasses who always looked tired. "We can make 3 more jumps today without straining the systems. The new energy collectors are working perfectly." The energy collectors were another human innovation. Instead of carrying fuel, the new ships gathered power from the empty space between stars. They could travel indefinitely without ever stopping to refuel. On the main screen, stars began to appear as the ship's sensors mapped their new location. This region of space was beautiful and untouched. No Council species had ever been this far from their home territories. "Admiral, incoming transmission from Earth," announced Commander Park. The screen changed to show President Kim Soo-jin sitting in her office. Behind her, Hyejin could see the lights of New Geneva, humanity's capital city. "Admiral Choi, congratulations on a successful jump. How do our new homes look?" "Perfect, Madam President. The advanced teams have done excellent work. We can begin moving civilians within the month." "Outstanding. What about our other projects?" Hyejin turned to look at Commander Lee, who was responsible for military construction. He was a serious man who rarely smiled, but today he looked pleased. "The hidden shipyards are ahead of schedule," Commander Lee reported. "We now have 37 major construction facilities spread across 12 star systems. Production is exceeding all projections." President Kim nodded approvingly. "And our new allies." Colonel Mi-young's voice came through the speakers from her distant post. "The Kethvara are grateful for our protection agreement. Their worlds were being threatened by raiders, but our patrol ships have ended those attacks. In return, they're sharing their agricultural technology with our colonists." "The Mordani are even more enthusiastic," added another voice. This was Captain Jinwoo Bay, speaking from a trading post near Mordani space. "They're master engineers who love human music and art. They're building manufacturing facilities for us in exchange for cultural exchanges." "And the Juxtai?" President Kim asked. "The Juxtai are warriors, but also philosophers," Mi-young explained. "They respect strength, but only when it's used to protect others. Our defense of the smaller species has impressed them greatly. They're offering to train our soldiers in advanced combat techniques." Hyejin felt proud of what humanity had accomplished. In just 6 months, they had built an alliance that was stronger than anything the Council had created in centuries. "What about Council military activities?" President Kim asked. Commander Lee pulled up a tactical display showing Council space. Red dots marked the locations of alien fleets and bases. "Our stealth scouts are monitoring all major Council military assets. Their technology is impressive but outdated. They rely too heavily on overwhelming firepower and intimidation." Dr. Tae-young stepped forward. "More importantly, they have no defense against fold space technology. Our ships can appear behind their lines, complete their mission, and disappear before the enemy can respond." "We're not planning to attack them," President Kim said firmly. but it's good to know we can defend ourselves if necessary. The meeting continued for another hour. Reports came in from human colonies across the galaxy. New worlds were being settled. Trade agreements were being signed. Children were being born on planets that had never seen alien visitors. After the call ended, Hyejin walked to the observation deck. Through the transparent metal, she could see the construction of New Busan, humanity's first major city outside Council space. Thousands of robots were building homes and factories, while human families waited in temporary shelters. Dr. Tae Young joined her at the window. "Do you think we made the right choice?" he asked. "Leaving the council?" "Absolutely. We wasted 50 years trying to earn their respect. In 6 months on our own, we've accomplished more than they thought possible. Some people back on Earth are worried. They think the council will come after us eventually." Hyejin laughed. "Let them come. They don't even know where we are. By the time they figure out what happened, we'll be strong enough to negotiate as equals." On the far side of the galaxy, Council intelligence was beginning to receive disturbing reports. Long-range probes had found human colonies completely empty. Not destroyed, not abandoned in haste, but carefully evacuated with no trace of where the populations had gone. Captain Rex Ollie was still filing reports that nobody read. His sensors had detected energy signatures that didn't match any known technology. Ships had been spotted in deep space that disappeared when investigated. Radio transmissions in human languages were being intercepted from directions where no human worlds were supposed to exist. But the Council leadership remained focused on their own problems. The Harketh Dominion was becoming more aggressive. Trade disputes were increasing between member species. Several minor rebellions had started on outer worlds. Nobody connected these problems to the missing humans. After all, humans were just a primitive species that had finally accepted their limitations and gone home to sulk. What the Council didn't know was that human scouts were watching their every move. Mi Young's teams had placed monitoring stations throughout Council space. Every military exercise, every political meeting, every secret negotiation was being recorded and analyzed. Humanity was learning the Council's strengths and weaknesses. More importantly, they were learning which Council species might be willing to consider new partnerships when the time came. "Admiral," Commander Park called from her station. "We're receiving a priority message from Scout Team 7. Hyejin returned to the bridge. "Put it through." The voice belonged to Captain Sora Kim, one of Mi Young's best officers. "Admiral, we've observed something important. The Council is having trouble with their border defenses. The Harketh are testing their responses and finding them inadequate." "How inadequate?" 3 Council outposts have been destroyed in the past month. The response time for reinforcements averaged 6 hours. Their communication systems are slow and their coordination is poor. Hyejin filed this information away for future reference. The Council had spent so long avoiding real conflicts that they had forgotten how to fight actual wars. "Continue monitoring, Captain Kim. Do not engage under any circumstances." "Understood, Admiral." As the new soul continued its journey through human space, Hyejin thought about the future. Humanity had spent centuries dreaming of exploring the stars and finding their place among alien civilizations. They had found that place, but it wasn't the one anyone had expected. Instead of junior partners in someone else's empire, humans had become the founders of something new. An alliance based on mutual respect and shared benefits rather than fear and hierarchy. The Council would learn about this eventually. When they did, they would have to decide whether to adapt to the new reality or cling to their old assumptions. Either way, humanity would be ready. 1 year after humanity's withdrawal, Counselor Vexathari stood in the Council's war room staring at a map that made no sense. Red markers showed Harketh attacks along the galaxy's outer rim. These weren't random raids anymore. The Harketh Dominion was launching coordinated strikes against Council territory, and their success rate was troubling. "Explain this to me again," Vexathari said to the military analyst, a nervous Corvani named Durgeth. "Sir, the Harketh have destroyed 7 Council outposts in the past month. They're using attack routes that we previously considered impossible." Vexathari studied the map more carefully. The attack routes passed through regions that used to be monitored by human early warning systems. Those systems had been dismantled when the humans left, but nobody had bothered to replace them. "What about our response times?" "Averaging 8 hours for the first units to arrive, sir. The Harketh are usually gone by then." 8 hours. When the humans were part of the Council, response times in those sectors had been under 2 hours. Vexathari had never paid attention to how the humans managed that, assuming it was simply a matter of positioning cheaper ships in dangerous areas. Now he was beginning to understand that the humans had been providing something more valuable than anyone realized. In another part of the station, High Chancellor Vordak was dealing with his own crisis. 3 Council member species had filed formal complaints about increased shipping costs and delayed deliveries. "The problem is clear," explained Trade Minister Kelvaron, a spider-like creature with 8 arms and a talent for mathematics. "Removing human space from our shipping network has increased average travel times by 22%. Fuel costs are up 31%. Vordak's branch-like fingers tapped against his desk. "Surely we can establish new waypoints to replace their facilities." "We've tried, Your Excellence. But the humans built their stations in optimal locations based on gravitational patterns and fuel efficiency. Moving to new locations requires significant infrastructure investment." "How significant?" "Approximately 40 billion credits for basic coverage. More for full replacement of their network." Vordak made a sound like wind through dead leaves. It was how his species expressed frustration. 40 billion credits to replace facilities that a primitive species had built and maintained for decades. What about their territory? Can't we simply occupy their old stations? Kelvaran's multiple eyes blinked in sequence. "That's the strange part, Your Excellence. Survey teams report that human space is completely empty. Not just abandoned, but stripped clean. Every station, every colony, every piece of infrastructure has been removed." "Removed how? Where did they take it?" "Unknown. There's no trace of where the materials went. It's as if millions of people and entire cities simply vanished." Counselor Vexathari was promoted to Director of Military Operations 3 days later. His first assignment was to figure out why Council defenses were failing so badly against the Harketh. The answer, when he found it, made him feel sick. For over 2 centuries, human ships had been patrolling the outer reaches of Council space. They had intercepted Harketh scouts, reported troop movements, and provided early warning of attacks. Council military planners had simply assumed this information came from their own intelligence networks. The humans had never asked for credit or recognition. They had simply done the job and filed reports that other species took for granted. Now that they were gone, the Council was blind to threats from the Galactic Rim. How did we not know about this? Vexithari demanded of his intelligence staff. Sir, human patrol reports were filed under routine security updates. They were processed by automated systems and integrated into our threat assessments without being labeled as human-sourced intelligence. You're telling me that a primitive species was responsible for monitoring half our borders and nobody noticed? The humans never emphasized their contributions, sir. They seemed content to work in the background. Vexithari spent the next week reviewing 50 years of security reports. The pattern was clear once he knew what to look for. Human ships had been everywhere, watching everything, reporting threats that Council forces then responded to. Without realizing it, the Council had been dependent on human vigilance for generations. The revelation came at the worst possible time. Long-range sensors detected a massive Harketh fleet assembling near the border. Intelligence estimates suggested they were planning the largest invasion in centuries. Vexithari called an emergency meeting of the Military Council. Representatives from 12 species gathered in the secure conference room to discuss the crisis. The Harketh have assembled over 300 ships, Vexithari reported. Our response fleet can deploy 90 vessels within 2 weeks. 90 against 300? Admiral Toklar of the Nexari fleet was horrified. Those odds are unacceptable. It gets worse. Our intelligence on Harketh capabilities is severely outdated. We haven't had reliable reports from their territory in over a year. What about our spy networks? Compromised or non-functional. It appears that most of our intelligence from the Outer Rim was actually being provided by human patrol ships. Without them, we're operating blind. The room fell silent. These were experienced military officers who had served the Council for decades. None of them had realized how much they relied on human support. What do you recommend? Asked General Vex Dorna of the Zelhari Marine Corps. We need to re-establish contact with Earth immediately. Whatever it takes to bring the humans back into the Alliance. 3 days later, Dongwoo Kim received an unexpected visitor at Neutral Station Alpha, a trading post on the edge of known space. The visitor was Torgak, an old Altarian contact who had once been friendly during diplomatic negotiations. Commander Kim, Torgak said as they met in a private conference room. It's good to see you again. Dongwoo had aged well during his year away from Council politics. He looked relaxed and confident, like a man who had finally found his purpose. Ambassador. Torgak, this is a surprise. What brings you so far from Council space? I think you know. The Council has reconsidered its position regarding human membership. Have they? How generous of them. Torgak leaned forward. Kim, I'll be direct. We made mistakes. The Council leadership now recognizes that human contributions were more valuable than we realized. Contributions? Is that what we're calling 50 years of unpaid labor now? The situation has become serious. The Harketh are preparing for major attacks. Our intelligence networks have gaps that we didn't know existed. We need human assistance. Dongwu smiled politely. I'm sorry to hear about your difficulties with the Harketh. But humanity is no longer part of the Council. These aren't our problems anymore. What would it take to change your mind? Nothing you can offer. Humanity has found new partners who treat us as equals. We're not interested in returning to our old role as junior members of your organization. Torgak looked confused. New partners? What new partners? Species you've never heard of. Civilizations that exist beyond your current understanding of the galaxy. We've been quite busy during our year away. That's impossible. Our surveys cover all inhabited regions of the galaxy. Your surveys cover Council space and nearby territories. There's a much larger galaxy beyond your borders, Ambassador. Humanity has been exploring it. Torgak tried a different approach. The Council is prepared to offer improved terms for human membership, better trade agreements, expanded territorial rights, even a permanent seat on the Security Committee. Generous offers. 6 months ago, they might have been tempting. Today, they're irrelevant. What do you mean? Dongwu stood up, signaling that the meeting was over. Ambassador, humanity spent 2 centuries asking for respect. We were told to be patient, to prove ourselves, to wait for recognition that never came. So we stopped waiting and started building something better. Building what? A future where species cooperate as partners instead of competing for scraps from the table of their superiors. As Torgak prepared to leave, he asked one final question. Kim, where are your people? Our surveys show human space is completely empty. We're around, Dongwu replied. Closer than you think, but farther than you can reach. After Torgak left, Dongwu activated a secure communicator. The signal traveled through fold space to reach Admiral Hyejin Choi, who was currently inspecting the construction of humanity's largest shipyard. Admiral, the Council has made contact. They want us back. What did you tell them? That we're not interested, but they're going to keep trying. The Harketh situation has them worried. Are you concerned about the Harketh? Not particularly. Our scouts report that they're fierce fighters but poor strategists. They're only succeeding because Council defenses are badly organized. Should we help? Dongwu thought about this question. Not yet. Let the Council learn what it means to stand on their own. When they're ready to treat us as equals, we can discuss cooperation. And if they're not ready, then they'll learn to adapt, sink or swim, as humans say. Meanwhile, in the depths of space, human ships continued their silent observations. The Council was struggling with challenges they had never faced before, problems that humans had been quietly solving for generations. Soon, very soon, the galaxy would learn that humanity had been much more important than anyone suspected. 18 months after humanity's departure, the Council faced its worst crisis in over 300 years. The Harketh Dominion had launched simultaneous attacks on 6 different sectors. Their fleets moved with coordination and intelligence that the Council had never seen before. Worse, another unknown force had begun hitting Council supply lines from a completely different direction. Fleet Admiral Wanshik Jang watched the battles from the bridge of his flagship, the Terra Nova. His ship hung invisible in the darkness between stars, using advanced stealth technology that made it undetectable to Council sensors. Wanshik was 55 years old and had spent his entire career preparing for this moment. As a young officer, he had served on Council joint operations and learned their tactics. As a captain, he had studied their weaknesses. Now, as the supreme commander of the new Terran Alliance fleet, he was ready to show the galaxy what humanity had become. "Sir, Council Fleet Delta is engaging the Harketh near Zarian Prime," reported his tactical officer, Commander On. "They're losing badly." Wanshik studied the holographic display. Council ships were big and heavily armed, but they moved like ancient sailing vessels. Slow, predictable, dependent on overwhelming firepower. The Harketh ships were smaller and faster, striking like wolves against a herd of cattle. "What's their response time for reinforcements?" 7 hours minimum, sir. The nearest Council reserve fleet is stationed 3 systems away. And the civilian population on Zarion Prime? Approximately 40 million beings, mostly Alterian colonists. The planet's orbital defenses were destroyed in the first wave of attacks. Wanshik made his decision. "Signal the Aurora Squadron. Emergency humanitarian deployment." Within minutes, 12 human ships materialized out of fold space around Zarion Prime. They weren't there to join the battle between the Council and the Harketh. They had a different mission entirely. The human ships moved past the fighting fleets like ghosts. Their weapon systems remained offline, but their shields were at maximum power. They positioned themselves between the Harketh attackers and the planet's surface. "Attention all vessels," Wanshik broadcast on all frequencies. "This is Fleet Admiral Wanshik Jang of the new Terran Alliance. We are conducting civilian evacuation operations. Any ship that interferes will be considered hostile." The response was immediate and confused. Council ships demanded to know who these unknown vessels were and how they had appeared without warning. Harketh commanders were equally baffled by the sudden appearance of ships that didn't match any known design. But the humans ignored all communications except emergency calls from the planet below. "Admiral, we're receiving evacuation requests from Zarion Prime," reported the communications officer. "Civilian authorities are asking for immediate assistance. Grant all requests. Deploy rescue shuttles immediately." Hundreds of small human craft descended toward the planet. They moved with precision and speed that amazed the watching fleets. Within hours, they were lifting off with thousands of refugees from the most dangerous areas. The Harketh fleet commander, a warrior named Kragthor, made the mistake of trying to intercept one of the evacuation shuttles. His ship's weapons fired plasma bolts at the small human craft. The bolts struck the shuttle's shields and disappeared harmlessly, absorbed by energy barriers that shouldn't have been possible on such a small vessel. Wanshik's voice came across the communication channels. "Calm and clear. Harketh vessel, you have fired on a humanitarian mission. Stand down immediately or face the consequences." Kragthor laughed. "Unknown ships, you are outnumbered 50-1. Withdraw or be destroyed. Final warning. Kragthor ordered his entire squadron to attack the evacuation fleet. What happened next became known as the Battle of Zerion Prime, though it lasted only 17 minutes. The human ships moved like nothing anyone had ever seen. They appeared and disappeared instantly, striking from impossible angles with weapons that passed through Council and Harketh shields like they weren't there. Quantum displacement cannons fired beams of twisted space-time that unraveled enemy. Vessels at the molecular level. Gravity mines created crushing fields that disabled entire squadrons without destroying them. Most impressive of all, the human ships seemed to know where enemy vessels would be before they arrived. When the battle ended, the entire Harketh attack fleet had been neutralized. Not destroyed, Wanshik noted with satisfaction, but disabled, and drifting helplessly. The crews were alive, but their ships were powerless. The watching Council fleet hadn't fired a single shot. They had been too shocked to react. "This is Admiral Tokalar of the Council Fourth Fleet," came a shaky voice over the communication system. "Unknown vessels, identify yourselves immediately." Wanshik appeared on the main communication screen. He was wearing a uniform that no Council species had ever seen before, dark blue with silver insignia that meant nothing to alien observers. "Admiral Toklar, I am Fleet Admiral Wanshik Jang, commanding the new Terran Alliance Defense Force. We've completed our humanitarian mission and are departing." "Wait, you're human? That's impossible. Humans don't have this kind of technology." 18. "Months is a long time, Admiral. Humanity has been busy." Before Toklar could respond, the human ships vanished back into fold space, leaving behind only disabled Harketh vessels and a planet full of grateful refugees. News of the battle spread across the galaxy within days. The Council leadership demanded explanations that nobody could provide. How had humans acquired such advanced technology? Where had they gotten ships that could appear and disappear at will? Most importantly, how many more ships did they have? The answers came from an unexpected source. Diplomat Eugene O appeared at the neutral trading station of Haven's Rest, a facility that served species from across the galaxy. She was 38 years old and had never served in the Council Diplomatic Corps. Instead, she represented something entirely new. "Ladies, gentlemen, and beings of all classifications," she announced at a crowded press conference, "I am here to introduce you to the Free Worlds Coalition." The audience included reporters and officials from dozens of species. Most had never heard of the Free Worlds Coalition. "For the past 18 months, Eugene continued, humanity has been exploring regions of the galaxy that the Council has never surveyed. We discovered advanced civilizations that have been isolated from galactic politics for millennia." She activated a holographic display showing star maps. The display revealed vast regions of space that Council surveys had marked as empty or uninhabitable. "The Kethvara are a peaceful species with the most advanced agricultural technology in the galaxy. The Mordani are master engineers whose manufacturing capabilities exceed anything the Council has achieved. The Juxtai are warrior philosophers who have perfected the balance between strength and wisdom." More species appeared on the display. "The Veltani, masters of energy manipulation. The Kormek, whose biotechnology could heal any injury or disease. The Starnhigh, whose mathematical models could predict the movement of entire solar systems. Each of these species was contacted by human exploration fleets. Instead of demanding submission or tribute, humanity offered partnership and mutual support. The result is an alliance of equals working together for common benefit. A reporter from the Altarian news service raised his hand. What does this have to do with the battle at Zerion Prime? The ships you witnessed were built using combined technologies from all coalition members. Keth Vara energy systems, Mordani construction techniques, Juxtai tactical doctrine, and human innovation working together. Another reporter asked, "How many ships does this coalition have?" Eugen smiled. "More than the Council, fewer than we need, enough to defend our interests and help those who request assistance." The questions continued for hours. Eugen answered them all with calm professionalism, revealing just enough information to be impressive while keeping crucial details secret. By the end of the conference, everyone in the galaxy knew that humanity was no longer the weak junior species the Council remembered. General Bo-Ram Kang was leading another humanitarian mission on the far side of Council space. Her forces had responded to distress calls from 3 different planets that were under attack by unknown raiders. The raiders turned out to be a species called the Vecti, aggressive scavengers who preyed on isolated colonies. They had been operating in Council space for months, but Council response times were too slow to stop them effectively. Bo-Ram's intervention was swift and decisive. Her ships disabled the raider vessels and provided medical aid to the attacked colonies. But instead of demanding payment or territory, the humans simply left after ensuring the colonists were safe. "Why are you helping us?" asked Governor Melthar of the Corvani colony on Destina 7. "What do you want in return?" "Nothing," Bo-Ram replied. "Helping others is what civilized beings do." The governor was confused. In his experience, no species provided aid without expecting something in return. "But surely you want trade agreements or resource rights or—" "Governor, your people are safe. That's enough for us." These incidents began happening throughout the galaxy. Human ships would appear during emergencies, provide assistance, and disappear without asking for rewards. Sometimes they arrived so quickly that it seemed impossible, as if they had known about the crisis before it happened. High Chancellor Vordak had ruled the Galactic Council for 200 years, but he had never felt as small as he did today. The emergency meeting had been called after the Battle of Kepler Station, where a massive Harketh invasion fleet had been stopped by ships that appeared from nowhere, fought with impossible weapons, and disappeared before Council reinforcements could arrive. The rescue of 50 million civilians from 3 different worlds, all completed in a single day by the same mysterious fleet, had shattered every assumption about military logistics and space travel. Now Vordak stood before the Council's greatest chamber, preparing to do something that no chancellor had done in over 3 centuries. Ask for help. "Honored delegates," his ancient voice carried across the vast room. "We face a crisis that requires unprecedented action. The entity known as the New Terran Alliance has demonstrated capabilities that exceed our current understanding. We must establish formal contact immediately. Counselor Vexathari, despite his recent promotion to Supreme Military Commander, looked haunted. His golden skin had lost its usual glow, and his confident bearing had been replaced by nervous energy. "Your Excellence," Vexathari said, "our intelligence estimates suggest this alliance possesses at least 500 advanced warships, possibly more. Their technology appears to be decades ahead of our own. If they choose to become hostile, they won't," interrupted Counselor Tara-Esh of the Peaceful Meladin. "Every human intervention has been humanitarian in nature. They're not conquerors." "That we know of," Vexathari replied, "but consider their strategic position. They can strike anywhere without warning, while our fleets require hours or days to respond to threats. If they wanted to destroy the Council, we couldn't stop them." The chamber erupted in nervous chatter. Species that had dominated the galaxy for centuries were suddenly discussing their own vulnerability like frightened children. Vordak raised his branch-like arm for silence. "The Harketh threat continues to grow. Our border defenses have failed, repeatedly. Standard tactics are proving inadequate. We need allies who understand modern warfare." "You mean we need the humans?" said Ambassador Yulneth, her energy form pulsing with reluctant acceptance. "The species we dismissed as primitive now holds the key to our survival." 3 days later, Fleet Admiral Wan Shik Zhang received the formal request he had been expecting. The message was transmitted through diplomatic channels to every major trading post in neutral space, ensuring that someone would deliver it to human representatives. The request was simple. High Chancellor Vordak wished to meet with the leadership of the New Terran Alliance to discuss mutual cooperation against common threats. Wan Shik read the message while standing on the bridge of his flagship, currently hidden inside the Magellan Nebula, along with 200 other human vessels. Around his ship, construction robots were building the largest military facility in galactic history. "They're finally ready to talk," he told his aide, Commander Kim. "Should we accept the meeting?" "Of course, but not on their terms." Wan Shik composed his reply carefully. The New Terran Alliance would be happy to meet with Council representatives. However, the meeting would take place in the Council's own chambers, and Wan Shik would address the full assembly as an equal, not as a supplicant requesting readmission. The response caused panic in the Council leadership. No non-member had ever addressed the full assembly. The security implications of allowing an unknown military commander into their most secure facility were staggering, but they had no choice. 1 week later, Wan Shik Zhang's personal transport materialized in the docking bay of the Council station. The ship was sleek and beautiful, built with curves that seemed to flow like water. Its hull absorbed sensor beams instead of reflecting them, making it appear almost transparent. Council security officers surrounded the ship as Wan Shik emerged. He was wearing the dark blue uniform of the Terran Alliance, with silver insignia, that gleamed under the station's lights. He was alone, except for 2 aides who carried no visible weapons. "Admiral Zhang," greeted Counselor Vexathari, who had been assigned to escort the human delegation. "Welcome to Council Station." Counselor: "Vexathari, it's been many years since we last spoke." Vexathari looked confused. "I don't believe we've met before." "No, but I attended several military briefings where you spoke about Council defense strategies. I was just a captain then, serving as a human observer. You probably didn't notice." "Me?" The implication was clear. Wanshik had been studying Council military doctrine for decades, learning their weaknesses while they ignored his presence. As they walked through the station's corridors toward the Great Chamber, Vexthari tried to gather intelligence. "Your ship's technology is remarkable. How did humans achieve such advances in just 18 months? "We didn't," Wanshik replied calmly. "We achieved them over 50 years of quiet research and development. We simply didn't share the results with the Council." 50 years? That's impossible. We monitored human scientific development. You monitored what we allowed you to see. Humans learned long ago that showing too much capability too quickly makes other species nervous. They entered the council chamber, and Wanshik felt a moment of satisfaction. The last time he had been in this room, he was a junior officer sitting in the tiny human section, ignored by everyone. Today, he walked to the center of the chamber as every eye followed his movement. High Chancellor Vordak spoke first. "Admiral Jang, the Council appreciates your willingness to meet with us during these difficult times." Chancellor Vordak, the Yodi, "Pleasure is mine. Though I should clarify my position, I'm not just Admiral Jang anymore. I'm Fleet Admiral of the New Terran Alliance Defense Force, Supreme Commander of Coalition Military Assets, and authorized representative of 12 allied governments." The titles hung in the air like thunderclaps. Every species in the chamber suddenly understood that they were no longer dealing with a single human representative, but with the military leader of an interstellar alliance. 12 governments. Vordak's voice carried a note of disbelief. "Humanity, plus 11 species that you've never heard of. All equals. All committed to mutual defense and prosperity." Wanshik activated a holographic projector that materialized a three-dimensional map of the galaxy. The display showed Council space as a small cluster of stars in the galaxy's center, surrounded by vast regions marked with unfamiliar symbols. "The galaxy is much larger than Council surveys indicated," Wanshik explained. "Your species have explored perhaps 15% of inhabitable space. The Alliance has been mapping the rest." Counselor Thekmore, the reptilian Zelhari representative, made his characteristic hissing sound. "Impossible. Our long-range probes would have detected major civilizations. Your probe searched for species with technology similar to your own. The Kethavara use biological systems that don't register on your sensors. The Mordani build underground cities that appear as empty worlds from orbit. The Juxtai live in mobile habitats that move constantly through deep space. The map updated to show the locations of Alliance worlds. There were hundreds of them, scattered across regions that Council records marked as uninhabited. The Alliance fleet currently consists of 437 major vessels," Wanshik continued, "with manufacturing capacity to double that number within 6 months, if necessary." Vexathari leaned forward. You're telling us that humanity has assembled the largest military force in galactic history and we knew nothing about it? You knew nothing because you weren't paying attention. Human ships were exploring the outer rim for decades, making contact with isolated species, building relationships based on mutual respect rather than hierarchical dominance. Vordak finally asked the question that everyone was thinking. What do you want from us? One Shik smiled. Nothing. We came here because you asked for help with the Harketh problem. The Alliance is willing to provide that help, but not as your subordinates. We'll work with you as equal partners, or not at all. Equal partners, repeated Ambassador Yulneth. You're asking us to treat humanity as our equals. I'm not asking for anything. I'm stating the terms under which cooperation is possible. The days when humans begged for recognition are over. We found that recognition elsewhere. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The Council could continue struggling against the Harketh alone, with their outdated technology and slow response times. Or they could accept that the galaxy had changed and adapt to the new reality. Counselor Tara Esh was the first to speak. Admiral, what would this partnership look like in practice? Simple. The Alliance will assist in defending Council worlds against the Harketh threat. In return, the Council formally recognizes the Alliance as an independent entity with equal standing in galactic affairs. Trade agreements will be negotiated between equals, not dictated by a superior to a subordinate. And if we refuse? Vexithari asked. Then you continue handling the Harketh on your own. The Alliance will remain neutral and focus on protecting our own territories. One Shik let that sink in before continuing. However, I should mention that 17 Council worlds have already submitted formal requests to join the Alliance. Apparently, our approach to interspecies cooperation is attractive to populations that have grown tired of being told what to do by distant bureaucrats.